right, gentlemen, thank you. Cliff, thank you. Brian, thanks.
My pleasure.
For joining us today. Today is all about this wonderful term, digital retailing, whatever the hell it means.
Everyone has their own definition, right?
It sure seems that way. It sure seems that way. And does it make sense to have digital retailing? Are we going to, is it the future? Is it current? Lots of questions around it. It's definitely been one of those nice buzzwords, as is attribution still seems to be one. I guess in some way this actually ties into attribution.
Well, yeah, you can't have digital retailing until you apply some attribution to it.
What is the
a little AI to go with it too,
Absolutely.
Maybe throw it in a blockchain.
Nah, we still got maybe a year or two before blockchain becomes a heavy buzzword for our industry, if it does. So we were talking about this earlier, Alex. What I think you had the actual definitions, so we can get that sort of out of the way and focus in on the actual workings of digital retailing, if that's what we're going to call it. I always call it buy online, but I guess someone coined it as digital retailing. But does it really match the definition?
It's a good term. I give that coiner that. But if you look in the dictionary, the definition of digital is a signal or data expressed as a series of digits, typically zeros and ones, and it goes on and on. But then you get to retail, and that is the sale of goods to the public in a relatively small quantities for use or consumption rather than for resale. So
okay.
Something happens in ones and zeros that turns into a transaction, basically.
So it's an actual transaction online. So whenever we talk about digital retailing in our industry, it's sort of a stumbling block because there's still a lot of paperwork that needs to be signed. And I don't know, and Brian, maybe you can chime in on this. I don't know is there a service out there that does the full transaction online? Because a lot of different, there's different states with different laws that won't permit. Right. Some banks, they're not capable, they won't permit it. So there's a lot of different variables to go along with that. What have you seen?
Yeah, so I'm working on this new book called Frictionless with Thomas Gage to cover digital retailing. And I guess there's two things going to Alex's definition. There are shopping tools that are called digital retailing, and then there's transactional tools. So a shopping tool, for example, when we talk about digital retailing, if a consumer is asked to put in their own payoff, right, which could be a guess or absolutely wrong numbers, you can't say that is a transactional tool. That's just a shopping tool to get closer down. Yeah. Same thing with the finance. If you are not doing a soft pull, and if you're asking consumers, tell me your credit score, I think that's a shopping tool. So what we've tried to do in the book is create levels. There's 7 levels, and each level shows a certain, competency or delivery. Mm-hmm. And I think the used car transaction is possible today. The new car is still, when people tell me we can do a full new car transaction, it's under a very, very limited set of circumstances. And most of the variables are not plugged in, mostly because F&I doesn't have a lot of APIs to pull all of that F&I data into a final transaction.
What's the difference between a new and used car transaction? What makes the new car transaction more difficult?
I mean, in some respects, we're still having problems on some websites and tools getting accurate rebates and incentives. And I mean, that's just humorous 2018. We're still
I was
there.
gonna say, I think we'd have that figured out by now, right?
We would think, but
we're not even close.
yeah. So I think with the new car transactions, Jeff, is you have more complexity in the F&I piece, a little bit more complexity in the price established. If somebody has a used car, there's the price. Okay, the dealer may not sell any F&I with that. They just sell the car and they deliver it to them.
Mm-hmm.
A new car, obviously they're working on that back-end gross, much harder, I think.
Well, it's even deeper than just rebates and incentives. It's the actual vehicle itself. And this is a problem for used cars as well. But let's look at the data sources that are out there. So you've got the big one, HomeNet, and then Chrome. And the goal of any technology supplier is to try and figure out how to turn a piece of inventory into a Chrome ID that they can send to Chrome and then blow up, whatever that Chrome ID is with all the data that is necessary to show that car in the best light. And that's difficult. Look at like Ram pickup trucks and how many different versions of those there are and things like that. So there's that issue. That's the first hurdle. And then to take that a step further, you have other companies such as maybe MarketScan that a lot of these companies are using as their payment piece. And MarketScan has its own ID system. So you have to take that Chrome ID and translate it into a MarketScan ID. And then you can start to, show applicable payments for that exact vehicle.
Sounds like a big mess.
It's fun.
Well, that's why I think, and Cliff knows this, he's, really talking with a lot of these new entrants. Everyone's using digital retailing. Some, or let's say most, are just shopping aids or tools to get the consumer more comfortable with or closer to a final transactional price, which is happening in the dealer. We asked, so far we have a few hundred dealers responding. We asked them, how many cars last month did you deliver with someone not showing up? These are people who do digital retailing. And like 80% said 0. You know what I mean? And others was like 1, 5, 3. So when we talk about digital retailing, we're far from the Amazon experience where the car shows up. And what I think the industry needs is some clarification between, is this a shopping tool or a transactional tool? Meaning, is it estimated based on rough guesses, or is this truly, something you'll sign paper on? And there's a gap.
Well, then, that really separates. I know you've got a running list, and ironically, we started a running list 2 years ago, I believe, over in the forums, where we're just asking, hey, if you know of a digital retailing provider or service, add it to the list. And, it's sort of tricky because a lot of them aren't full digital retailing services. They are just more or less a shopping cart, a nice tool, which, I'm a fan of. I think anytime you can get that customer in the shopping cart process, you can get them from, step 1 to step 4, or even if you can complete step 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8, however many steps you have, you're getting that customer to, they're taking steps to do business with your dealership. So if you can get someone in that process, turn around and when they do finally come into the dealership, you've lessened the time for the delivery, less time in the F&I box. That just, time saving. It's huge for the consumer. And a lot of times, ultimately, I think that's what they're after. Not so much of a full transaction online, but can I save time at the dealership and not have to go through one of those possible, 4-hour deliveries?
Yeah, there's some doubters. I was talking to a very respected marketing manager, said, Brian, digital retailing is really kind of a joke because 70% of the people who come in the showroom change the vehicle they're buying. So, so number one, that's one doubter. And my response was, okay, I get that, but if they've done their credit app, if they've done their trade-in, it saves time. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that the big conversation is, do consumers really know how to do the work? I know Car Now has been making breakthroughs because it's more of like a live concierge, live assistant. And what's happening is this new term called super leads. I don't know if you guys have heard it.
Super leads.
People are calling digital retailing. Don't call it digital retailing. Just call it super leads. Because, as you said, as they make more commitments, as they give more information, the leads close higher.
Hey, Jeff, are we going back to the old lead scoring days?
Yeah, I think we are. Yes. Throwing a little bit of poke lead scoring.
Nothing new under the sun.
Just all regurgitation, right?
Yes. That's 8, 9, and 10. We now have a super lead.
Well, Cliff, what's your feeling on everything? And that's a big question.
We have right now, I'm tracking 38 different companies that offer some sort of quote unquote digital retailing solution.
Well, I'll have to get with
Only
you. Only 38?
Yeah,
I think I've got maybe 11 or 12 here, but I have tried to make sure that this list is more than just a shopping cart. The consumer can pretty much make a full transaction.
Okay.
Maybe not.
Yeah, when I say some aspect, I'm including Brian's definition of shopping tools.
The tools, some type of shop. So basically a shopping cart.
Yeah. So this is a broad, expanded look because and I will tell you that there are more. It seems like a new one pops up every week.
Yes.
To be honest,
and more are coming. More are coming.
Yeah. No, true. They are. And there's one just this past week actually relaunched its platform. Peter Kermanos is behind it, is financing it.
What's that one called?
Deliver My Ride.
Okay.
So that just this past week relaunched. So there's a lot of money being thrown at it. I'll say out of the 12 startups where we know how much investment they've had, it's a combined $744.5 million over the last 2 years.
Is there more to grab?
That's not counting the ones with established companies where all the development costs have been spent.
Oh, I'm kidding, Cliff. It sounds like we need to break that billion mark just for the fun, and it's a low barrier to entry.
Well, that's like I said, it's 12 startups for whom we know the investment.
One of the funny things, Cliff, in the survey we're currently doing, we asked the digital retailing companies, is this software all yours? Meaning, like, did you develop this whole thing? 100% of them said yes. And I laugh because they can't help themselves, because we know that they're really right. Like Market Scan, for example, could be a provider, or Credit Miner for soft pulls into the bureaus. And you mentioned, so it's very interesting, even when you're talking about who's powering the technology, the people are really tight-lipped. They're not like, we got something proprietary. We've figured out VIN decoding. We've figured out loan matching. I'm like, well, how you doing? It's like, well, we built this system. And then I find from other people, it's like, well, they're reselling this piece. It's a little crazy about how many true players are in.
You can't deliver an accurate payment without having relationships with every lender and knowing all tax equations and
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is it is definitely an ecosystem out there of numerous players that all have to interact at some level.
Does our business even have should we even be offering digital retailing? Does it even make sense to have that as an option? Yeah, I know it's easy to say yes, of course. You know,
I think that we need to, I think going back to what we were talking about a little earlier, I think we really need to, as vendors in the space, have to manage the expectations accurately and not overpromise on what some of these solutions can or cannot provide. And on top of that, then the dealers have to be accurate managing the expectations with the consumer in their advertising and marketing. I mean, some of these tools are phenomenal and really do help smooth out the process. Sometimes it creates more friction, but I think we have to manage those expectations accurately. I'm not sure we're doing that as an industry real well from the vendor side, from a marketing. And then the other problem is we have these startups, guys that aren't folks that aren't in the industry, aren't typically from the industry, that have a frustrating experience, and then they decide to come in and they think they can build this piece of software that'll solve all the issues, and then they get mentioned in the press, to get all the magazines to write in newspapers to do write-ups about them, or they show up on CNBC or somewhere else hawking what they've got, and they're not much of anything. I mean, so I think there's a lot of noise. I don't know how we cut through it.
I think what Cliff's saying is, if Cliff's not writing about you, you haven't arrived yet.
Well, you know, Jeff, to answer your question, the OEMs that I'm talking to, we see what Ford's doing. They believe that that's what consumers want. In the UK last month, Ford basically launched a consumer direct website. Right on the homepage says, you can buy it. You don't have to visit the dealer. We'll deliver the car to you. So the OEMs that I'm speaking with are saying this: we've surveyed consumers, this is what they want, and we have to slowly introduce new ways to remove friction, to protect our brand, to protect our market share. The biggest challenge from all the surveys is not the technology, assuming, as Cliff said, you set expectations right, that it's not going to be perfect. The biggest is culture. The dealers we talk to who don't want anything to do with it say, this will disrupt our culture, it will disrupt our play plans, it will create havoc. And they basically said, until we're forced to, like with a gun to our head, we're not changing. And
isn't that how dealerships handle all technology?
Yes.
They all took the SEO really quickly. So, yeah, that's always a challenge. You're right, Jeff. Hey, Brian, I am curious, in your surveying and talking to these maybe 38 different companies, how many of them were tackling subprime?
You know, that's a good question. I have not had any specific memory of, as we're talking to them, that they're talking about subprime at all. So I can't recall a conversation. And honestly, Alex, that's a good point. We're creating a master functionality chart for each of the, and Cliff and I are right in the same, there's around, little under 40, folks that are in this pool. I'm trying to get a functionality charts, and we'll publish it first, I promise, on Dealer Refresh.
All right.
But that's a great question, because people say that the subprime financing is such a manual process that they're not really sure if the traditional loan approval stuff can be automated. What's your experience?
My experience? I'm just asking the question. I do know how difficult it is, and I do know that it can be up to like 40% of all automotive transactions. So it's a big market.
I think it's about 30% is the accepted number. But yeah, when you go through some of these tools that have the financing aspect to it, they obviously, most of them ask the question where you fall on the credit.
Yeah.
So I think but where it goes after, I mean, if you click bad credit, what the process is after that, who knows? Right. It is manual. It is very manual. It's very hands-on. process. Has to be.
Yeah, that's an area where I see where potentially if you could knock out a lot of the qualification steps and then hand a subprime customer over to a franchise dealer who doesn't typically deal in it, that could help them greatly. Anyway,
Alex, one of the
the wheels are turning in my head.
Talking about difficult things, one thing that no one really has an answer to is if we think digital retailing is transactional, then what are we going to do with the dealers who have addendums on cars? And there's some publicly traded groups where every single new car has an addendum on it. And that addendum's not disclosed on cars.com or Trader. It's not disclosed on the dealer's website, but they put tinting, pinstriping, nitro fill, and so it's 1,500 packed on every new car. I mean, some people say that, it has to go away because if they can't transact, they can't surprise the customer. So that's one thing that everyone's kind of squirming about, that these addendums on the vehicles aren't really covered by anybody in digital retailing.
I haven't seen an addendum on a new vehicle in probably 6 or 7 years.
Oh, why don't you come take a visit up here, Jeff?
Well,
I was thinking about New Jersey.
Yeah.
Maybe
Demographically, it's closer.
Must be a New England thing, Brian, or just outside of New England too. God forbid we call New Jersey part of New England.
Is that
I've seen it in Texas. I've seen it in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So it's
the $400
pinstripe.
pinstripe?
What's that?
The $400 pinstripe?
Yeah. 300 nitro fill for the tire.
Maybe the conversation needs to move from being transactional to more enhanced shopping experience. And we just take that conversation away from the transactional focus.
Yeah, you get away from the definition,
right?
And you start to look at it, like Brian's saying, as a shopping tool. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Is there, Brian? You're out there amongst the dealerships. Is there a service out there that maybe has a pretty good stronghold on the percentage of dealerships out there thus far? Who is the biggest service provider of digital retailing, or even just a shopping cart, as long as you can pretty much get through the full process of purchasing the car online? I know Clutch is pretty big.
So in this broad definition that Cliff and I are talking about, the data on what digital retailing platform you're using or that you've experimented with is skewed because of Accelerate,
yes,
and CDK Connected Store, because they just have so many websites. The dealer says, hey, I got Connected Store. Is it really working for you? Well, not yet, but that's what I have. And Accelerate, yeah, we like it. It creates super leads. It's not digital retailing. It's so with that little footnote, that in the survey, the people had the most experience with the two products that are primarily connected to a website platform. I think the Roadster platform, AutoFi, have come up a lot in our conversations. We have some people who are doing it themselves, right? So Schomp and Walzer have kind of built their own consumer retailing experience. But here's what I've already found, Jeff. People have already swapped. So like, for example, I'm just picking at one. Somebody's saying, oh man, we got this dealer group. They're on Roadster. And then I just heard they threw Roadster out. And, they're on. So we're already in the early innings seeing dealers being impatient and swapping. So we have some dealers who are on their third DR shot. So I don't think there's any big leader outside of the two that have influenced by scale.
Why? What do you think is causing the turnover like that? Like, what are they looking for that maybe they're not getting in the first service provider?
Cliff hit it on the head. They didn't set realistic expectations.
Okay.
If somebody comes in and says, look, we're going to have down to the penny perfect deals, or it's easy for a consumer to pick up the deal 2 or 3 times online and then come in and have a seamless experience. From what I'm hearing is some platforms were pulled because they couldn't calculate taxes and stuff, right, which was Alex was saying. Other people thought it was a full funnel solution and found out that it was a pain in the ass to pick up the deal in the showroom. So I think for all the DR companies listening today, heed Cliff's words. I'd rather have you go into a dealership say, look, we're learning together. Let's learn together. Let's evolve the shopping experience. We're not transactional yet. We'll get there to the degree that technology and laws allowed us, but let's just make it better for the consumer. If they did that, I think there'd be less churn, but that's not the approach. It's like we have the best of everything.
Yeah, they're dialing in on that buzz term.
You know what's interesting about today's show so far, at least in the Facebook comments? There aren't any questions. A lot of comments.
A lot of comments, a lot of links.
Well, I think it speaks to the newness of what this all is, too.
True.
We're all trying to figure it out.
True.
Well, and there's varying opinions. I have some clients that believe that the F&I manager's job is toast in the near future in a more conversational purchasing experience where the sales associate, picks up the deal and walks it all the way through. One of the other things, Alex, and obviously working with CRMs as much as you have, one other issue that no one seems to be resolving is I don't believe that these DR leads, let's call them super leads, somebody who maybe does their trade, does their finance, asking for a little help. I think they should have a single point of contact. That's not how dealers are structured. And number 2, I don't think they should follow the same workflows of a get e-price lead. And so no one's talking really about what's the workflow look like.
That's a great point. And yeah, I don't have anything that's a great point. I mean, throwing it into the single process is is absolutely a crusher. and actually, Eric Milch is chiming in now, asking a question. Thanks, Eric. Does the CRM follow-up process need to change when using a DR solution? And I would say yes. One of the failures I saw during my CRM days was that every dealer is a strong statement. Most dealers that I saw had a singular process that they put every single lead and every single customer through, and never any consideration for the source of where that customer was coming from.
Or the state of mind that they were in.
Or the notes, the comments, are they asking a question, or are they just, they just want a price, or is there an actual question about the particular vehicle that they're interested in? Reading.
So one of the I don't want to be dramatic, but let's just say that dealers will be embracing some type of automated or improved shopping experience, which we're calling digital retailing. And some of the reasons why the early dealer track platform kind of fell flat is the shopping tools were great, but then they turned the corner. The consumer is like, okay, I need this, and the early data from dealers using DealerTrack digital retailing, which was probably the first product that was on the market, the drop-off rate was huge. And I think that's because consumers get bombarded when they put a lead in. For the last 15 years, they know if they put in their contact, they get bombarded. So one of the biggest challenges with digital retailing, and I think CarNow has done a good job on this, is acknowledge the fact that when they move down the shopping process and you ask them for information, if you haven't created a feeling of safety, if you haven't given them a net of encouragement that the process is going to be different, then it's going to fail. And dealers have a short window if they're going to be saying, hey, we have a new buying experience, and they're on cable and they're advertising it, and then they bombard the shit out of the person with dumb emails because they push it through, like to you, a workflow. So we have to be very careful of what the window of time is that we don't screw up the potential of rewriting how consumers can shop and buy a car.
So maybe some of the success of digital retailing, and I'm not making this comment, I'm actually asking a question. So I'll take that maybe word out and I'll say, is the success of digital retailing, you know, a little too tied to the CRM? And maybe if we disconnected those two, digital retailing
none of the CRMs today have a data record, the old ADF format. David Metter and I have been working on 2.0 spec, but today's CRMs are broken. So I would say that pushing a DR lead through a CRM is pretty much going to be a doomed process, but dealers hate logging into two things, right? So I think we need a new CRM, and I know that would interest you as a new project, that was more advanced in its data set, or dealers are going to have two sets of tools. They're going to have a DR dashboard for a single point of contact, concierge experience, and all the other leads go to the CRM. I mean, I don't know, but the CRMs can't do it today. They're throwing all this DR shit in the comments, and you can't unwind it. You can't do intelligent workflows. It's a mess.
We will start seeing some fully new CRM tools built from the ground up that aren't necessarily, well, definitely not going to be CRM of the past, but CRM for the future. I've seen some pretty cool concepts that are being built today.
So if you've got your crystal ball out and you're making your predictions.
Yeah. I think in the next over the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see a resurgence.
I'm really looking forward to 2020. I feel like that's the year when we're really going to start to see the light is on the horizon. I know the light is just underneath the horizon right now, but it's going to really start showing itself in 2020, to your point, Cliff.
I think it's going to be a little bit longer than that.
I've seen a few things too, but you might be right. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of other headwinds out there right now that are impacting the industry also, and I think we'll see some shakeup. There'll be some more M&A activity over the next couple of years, probably.
What is there anything you can hint at without giving it away on the M&A side?
Well, there's investors looking to do roll-up type plays, and one of the challenges we have is that the strategic buyers today have pretty much everything they need at the moment. So it's that impacts the unless you're cars.com, or you're car gurus, you probably will continue to be buyers. I mean, cars.com will be, but there's that's one of the things that's impacting right now. We've seen the rate of transactions slow down, and I think we're going to see a lot of it from the investor side.
Well, there isn't much left to buy, it seems like.
Well, that's the question. I mean, we're probably entering a phase where right now there's not a lot. The Cox Automotive, CDKs of the world, cars.coms, what have you, don't need a online or digital retailing solution. They have theirs, right? So we're not going to see those. I mean, that's going to have to come from the investor side. The next play over the next 5 years will be interesting to see whether we see any movement on development on fixed ops. But I think that's going to be a longer play, because for us to see a true breakthrough, I think we're going to have a tsunami of connected vehicles hitting the roads. That's going to be another 2 to 3 years. So I don't think we can do the fixed ops piece without the connected vehicles.
Well, what about your companies such as Cars.com, Auto Trader, your listing marketplaces out there? What's the play? Is there any play for them with digital retailing, and how's that work? How's that flow down to the dealership? I know Cars.com's acquisition of Dealer Inspire brought Dealer Inspire's a car buying piece. at that time, I saw some synergies there,
Right.
especially if you're a dealership that was already using or to be using a Dealer Inspire website. Cars are listed on cars.com. You've got a Dealer Inspire website. Customer starts a transaction. Maybe step 1, 2, 3 on cars.com, comes over to the dealership website through that transaction portal, and it becomes pretty seamless. Now they're sort of on the dealership website piece of it, and it's a great flow for the consumer right there.
Jeff, one thing, I have two concerns about how third parties play. Number one, it looks like each OEM is picking their own platform and workflow for DR. Okay, so imagine this, and there's a doomsday scenario, and there's an innovation scenario. Here's the doomsday scenario. You can't put DR buttons on a third-party classified because it totally screws up the consumer experience, because when they hit that button like buy now or reserve now or lock in, whatever, if it's a Ford, it goes through one workflow. If it's this, it goes to another workflow. And I've even heard OEMs say, we don't want to put that DR button on a third-party classified at all. We want to own the experience, which I disagree with that strategy. The other piece is, could a DR platform write a universal connector? Meaning, let's just say AutoFi, Roadster, a few of these other guys represent the OEMs. There's 5 players, 6 players, each with a different workflow. Could Cars.com and Joe Chura's team create a universal connector so that if they do put a buy now button, it can actually pull in and follow, but keep it in a Cars.com wrapper? That will be interesting. But the first scenario is, holy cow, if every OEM has their own thing, and it's a little chaotic, I think.
Well, an experience that I've seen, and it's one example of this is with Mercedes, one you're quite familiar with, Jeff. You go to the Mercedes USA website and you go to configure a vehicle, and then you go to build out your payments. Mercedes does offer a 100 mile a year lease, but they don't show it on their website. They only show 3 options, and I think they're limited by the software supplier they're using to only show 3 mileage options when they have 4. You go down to the dealer level, and I've seen linked directly from Mercedes to the dealer's website where they have something that, I won't get into how they advertise the payments being $600 a month less and all that good stuff. That's very confusing, because when you go into the payment tool, it's nowhere near that. But the payment tool then shows a totally different set of mileages. So even just in getting mileages consistent between the OEM experience and the dealer experience, it seems to be a challenge.
Yeah.
I do think, by the way, that we will see the online shopper button on Cars.com's listings. I think Cars.com strategically purchased Dealer Inspire, just not for websites, but to evolve Cars.com not to just a shopping platform, but an actual eventual transactional platform. And if they can pull that off with the different manufacturers, that's amazing. But Joe Chura's team is smart. They're hungry. So I would expect in the next year you see online shopper on Cars.com, that they visit the website, they have online shopper. It's very consistent. Of course, that's what Cox is doing with Accelerate. Okay.
Didn't they purchase Clutch?
Well, they incubated it.
It was sort of an acquisition. I mean, they brought it fully in-house. I mean, they were quote unquote in control of it already. So, but Brian, the Cars.com, they're going to do whatever their activist investor tells them to do.
Right. I know. How hungry can they be? I mean, there's hundreds of millions of dollars in acquisition.
Yeah, we're going to see some changes there over the next several months, and I think that's going to show us or reveal their strategy moving forward. So we'll see a couple of acquisitions too, I'm sure.
Kevin Fry brought up a good point because we were just talking about the flow. He said, we're all going to have to agree on a desking tool. Of course, the comment just just disappeared. No, we need to agree on a common desking solution where any digital retailing tool can feed into. Definitely a concern.
That's key.
We
Yeah.
need to agree on a whole lot more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
it starts with the
Yeah, sure.
dealing with payments, and you're not including the manager in the process.
Right.
That's a miss. Yeah.
Now, earlier, Cliff, you mentioned something around F&I departments maybe being a little concerned that would be the first department that would dwindle or fizzle if these tools really start to take a stronghold. And one could say, well, what about salespeople as well? With the F&I side, I know whenever I was implementing probably one of the first actual services out there trying to do a full online buy. That was something that I had to go up against was the F&I departments really worrying about not having the opportunity to speak with the customer and be able to upsell insurances, products and all that good stuff. But, I quickly got them to realize that actually, if you could put that customer in that shopping cart experience and provide the opportunity to play with the payment, to, remove the insurance, put it back in, maybe the wheel protection or, any of the other, addendum things that we like to throw in there, that it actually improved. The consumer being able to have that opportunity, and always go back to the days of the shopping cart that Dell had. I mean, I probably purchased 3 or 4 different Dell computers way back in the day. And as far as I know, they were sort of the pioneers of the online shopping cart. And to be able to go in there and manipulate your payments by adding this, taking it off, subtract, maybe I want this processor. What I found was I was constantly bumping myself because I'm like, oh, it's only $4 more a month. Where it's only $15 more a month.
So Jeff, we asked dealers who are using DR, are their DR deals less profitable, more profitable, or the same? And basically, right now the survey is about 80% said same or higher.
Okay.
And they're finding that, just like you're saying, when presented the right way, with the right tools, with all the portfolio, that the average dollars on the back end for F&I products actually went up.
Go up.
And not by a lot. It may be on average $60, $70, but I mean, some people are saying or thought, hey, if I do that, I'm going to be losing a few $100 on the back end. And that doesn't seem to be happening. That doesn't seem to be happening.
Yeah, that's I'll have to go back through and find that stat. But there was some type of initial study around that was showing that I think it was almost a $200 or $300 more per deal with back end. Again, needs to be presented.
I've heard from some progressive dealers who are strong in F&I that it was less, $500 less per deal.
On digital retail.
Yeah.
I like how you call them progressive.
Well,
usually you call them criminals. Oh, sorry. Or they've been trained by the alpha dog.
I know of a Toyota dealer who recently constructed a new facility, and several months ago, I guess, probably last year now. And once they built the new facility and moved in, their F&I revenue started going through the roof. And they had not hired anyone new, had not done anything different from a process perspective or any new solutions. And they finally figured it out. The F&I, the vehicle delivery area and the F&I area were in the same were in adjacent locations, and there was a glass wall. And the way the customer was positioned, gave them a full view of the vehicle that was being pulled into the delivery area. And that was what they determined was responsible for the jump in F&I revenue.
Because they could see the car that they wanted to protect with F&I products.
Right.
Smart. I love that.
I mean, it was a total accident, but...
and could some of the lift in back end also because they hired Wells Fargo tellers?
Yeah, that could be too, maybe. I don't know. But my point to that is that the F&I experience still is a human touch experience. I mean, it's hard to see that going away.
Yeah.
And that might be the issue with digital retailing as we're all looking at it. And I say we all, and I might be trying to speak for an industry, I don't know. But, you know, we look at it as potentially replacing some of these touch points. And the car buying experience is so emotional. It's very different than any other purchase that we make. People go crazy when they buy a car. If we were rational about buying cars, we would all drive Hyundai Accents. So our emotion requires somebody on the other end to touch us, pat us on the butt, and say, "Hey, you're doing a good job. This is a smart buying decision."
Yeah.
You know? So, and that's where digital retailing is failing, or at least the initial definition of it. I've always felt like these things are trying to replace that whole thing and not recognize there's a psychological element that needs to be present in the car buying experience.
Totally agree, except the F&I office is the least desirable part. I mean, consumers love test driving. They love touching, feeling. They love picking out options. And at least what the surveys, and this is what's driving, I think, the OEMs in general, the market is, you know, waiting an hour or two for the F&I office, then feeling it's a meat grinder, and then coming out the other end thinking that you're going to get a car for $399 a month, and now it's $450, and feeling like pressured. I think that's the part. Not so much change that or remove the human touch, but remove the unpleasant structure that everyone has to go through.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know, you know, I worked for quite a few dealerships where the F&I manager was basically the closer. You know, you'd write up a simple invoice, throw a payment on there, put them in the box, and you know that the F&I manager was the strong. He was the one that was closing and making the deals. And so I can see why consumers, you know, can feel like they just came out of the meat grinder. Now, Brian, you said earlier, you mentioned CarNow a few times, and I'm pretty familiar with the product, and I've actually demoed not too long ago their buy online piece.
Buy now, yep.
Which they've also brought over into an app as well for an iPad, which I'm pretty impressed with as well. Are there some key advantages that you think a service like CarNow has because of the chat integration in with the shopping cart buy online piece? Is that what maybe separates it from some of the other competition?
Yeah, I think that as Cliff said, there's people who come from fintech, come in automotive, they develop software, and they really don't understand all the perceptions and bad experiences consumers have, which impact behavior. I think CarNow never said we're going to be transactional, that we are going to be a concierge. I think it's how they approach. I think to Cliff's point, they set expectations and said, look, we're not transactional. We are a concierge. So we're going to help them with their trade. We're going to help them with their finance. We're going to help them answer all the questions and use these tools to get them into the dealership. That's a very different approach, at least how some of the other companies are marketing. Just put this widget on. It's so simple to use. And lo and behold, you know, you're going to get deals coming through our dashboard, and it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, that's the I'm with you 100%. Yeah, after the demo.
My understanding about Car Now is they've got a pretty strong dealer base already.
Who's that, Car Now?
Yeah, from what I understand. So they've been under the radar quietly, but seem to be.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
What about some other services out there? What are there some key steps within that shopping cart per se that need to happen or should be taken away? How are a lot of them overcoming the whole trade piece?
I like what Dealer Reprocess is doing. They have a new product coming out called SARA, S-A-R-A. I like the fact that as a consumer puts in their trade, they just put in their first name, last name, email, home address. They do the soft pull, and then they match the loan to the car they're trading in to get the actual payoff according to credit bureaus. It's completely seamless, so they don't have to do social security number. They pull the credit score. I like that. Meaning if I had a choice as a consumer and you asked me, what's the payoff on my car? I'm stopping there. I mean, like, holy shit, I got to log in.
Yeah.
So that's a stumbling block for me. And if someone says, put in your credit score, and if I don't know my credit score and I just make up a stupid number, I know the payments is going to be screwed up. So I think they're smart that those two particular numbers, which most consumers aren't aware of, actually are handled completely behind the scenes. So, and they have an exclusive relationship with some of the credit bureaus. So, for example, some of the popular equity mining tools on the market actually use credit miner technology to do the soft credit pull, because what Dealer Reprocess can do is pull the loan data for any car. Some DR platforms only can pull captive lending data, right, from the DMS. So when you talk about the trade, Jeff, we have to ask the DR companies, can you pull the credit bureau loan payoff, or are you only able to pull captive, data from my DMS? There's a big difference there right now where the market's heading.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in play yet. That's I like that. That's really getting rid of one of those stumbling blocks for sure.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah. What other are there any other steps that you've seen that maybe where the consumer falls off and we need to figure out? And where does, I know who we just had, Nick Cibella over, he's doing a lot of VR stuff. So I'm interested. We need to get Nick back on, find out if where the VR maybe falls into this.
Payments on your screen.
Yeah, exactly.
He keeps on walking into walls though, because he walks around with that VR headset.
I got a question for you, Brian. And Cliff, you can probably jump in on this too. How much are these tools? How much are they charging dealers for these things?
That's a good question. Anywhere from.
That's a great question. I would say anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 is probably a good chunk of what that range is. I don't know, Cliff. What have you seen?
Yeah. It's a mix. I think anywhere from. And I think the question that I would have is, what should the business model be? And that's one thing that I do look at, actually, is how these companies are going to make money. Because it's another thing you have to put on the website. Should it be something that's just included in the website package as part of the website? Or is it something extra? I don't know. But I think Brian's pricing is pretty much in line with what I've seen.
Well, I got a follow-up to it. When you're in that price range and talking about a business model, one who is offering this product should be asking themselves, can I survive a recession?
Well, all companies should answer that question for sure.
Well, yes, but if I'm a technology provider to car dealers, how close am I to the chopping block if a recession were to
Right, and so here's my counter. That you could even see them potentially flourish, because the DR, one thing that the good online to showroom experience does. It does make labor efficiency higher. So a desk manager isn't going back and forth with 12 pencils, per car, per busy Saturday, meaning if the sales associate's penciling the deal with the consumer side by side, it allows managers to manage more instead of desking, everything. I would make the case that in a recession, automation or promises to reduce labor costs, which is the biggest overhead in a recession, these tools could accelerate that demand.
Well, I like that argument. That's a good one. Now, you hit on something else where it just occurred to me that, based on something you said, that there's two kinds of managers in a car dealership, or, and I'm generalizing a little too much, but let's say there are two. There's a manager who actually goes out and tries to teach his job to the person underneath him, and then there is a desk monkey who sits on the desk all day and just waits for deals to come in. And the desk monkey, in a lot of cases, is kind of a big population. Wouldn't a tool like this threaten that person?
Well, it does two things. It simplifies their job. Could eliminate. I mean, I know dealers now who are moving towards eliminating F&I managers, and I even know some who are considering eliminating general managers, believe it or not, because the highest, cost to a dealer is their overhead, and they're trying to do technology and other things that make it more a collaborative experience. Wasting time is expensive. So, I mean, we're in the early innings, but there will be role changes, pay plan changes, structural changes as some of these tools allow a consumer to walk in and pick up exactly where they left off. That's fantasy for the majority of car purchases today. But as Cliff said, over the next few years, I would expect for me to do as much work as possible online, come in, test drive the car, and I want to be in and out in an hour. That's what I want.
No, Cliff,
that's what a lot of people want. But it's funny, we still mention the test drive so many times. So every time we talk about online transaction or digital retailing, worrying about, is the sales position job going to go away? Is the dealership going to go away, et cetera? It still always comes down to everyone, says, still need the test drive. And then you mentioned someone earlier saying that, so many customers come into the dealership, they're looking at that particular vehicle, according to them, that's the vehicle that they're going to acquire and they're going to purchase, but they end up purchasing something completely different after the test drive.
Yes.
And again, that's why I said something about VR and where, something such as Nick and his company can come into play. Is VR, will that ever be a substitute for the test drive? Which I don't know how it would be, could be. But, who would have known my son would spend 2 or 3 hours on Fortnite every night playing, So.
Well, your 1989 version of yourself playing Nintendo for 3 hours.
Yes.
But, I got one other question for Cliff. No, you might be able to answer this, but in a lot of my conversations of late, especially with dealer principals or executive management in dealer groups, I have yet to speak to one who either hasn't taken the group to a one price scenario or aren't considering it. Do we have any idea how many dealers might be heading down the one price route in the near future?
Well, this definitely, digital retailing, I think, pushes that.
I think one of the weaknesses, one of the challenges of the one price scenario is that you really have to have a dynamic pricing tool that's able to see the market and change prices dynamically. Because otherwise, I think you could run into some real trouble.
So rather than one price, actually look at the market and automatically set that price accordingly.
Right. Yeah, there's a few dealers that have done very well with it. And obviously, Walzer's one, but they had it for a while, and they set their course, and they keep.
And that's also a one-price market, right? That Minnesota. I mean, Maury's is our client. You know, Walzer's there.
I mean, Walzer kind of drove them, but you're right. That is a one-price market, so it's a little bit easier up there, I think, for them to do that. But it's interesting you say that, Alex, because I hear people talk about it, consultants mainly. I don't hear a lot of dealers talking about it, but.
And we also can say that for used cars, pretty much we're all at one price because everyone's market pricing and trying to hold within $100 or $200. So for used cars, I've heard it said that all dealers are effectively one price.
True. And Drew Amin also says that in major metro markets, it's essentially all one price anyway.
Alex, I have to jump off.
Oh yeah, look at that! It's over.
It's actually great timing.
Yeah, look at that. So I got to jump off and do a call.
You jump off and do a call, Brian. We really appreciate you joining us today, and we'll have you back on here real soon.
Great. And I just want to remind everyone, in November we'll have a new book out called Frictionless with Thomas Gage, and. Yep. We're going to be gathering all the top DR companies at the Automotive Analytics and Attribution Summit in Palm Beach, November 18, 19, 20. So all the major technology players will be on display or representatives there to talk to dealers. So if dealers are looking to get a comprehensive shopping experience themselves with all the partners, I'd encourage them to come down to the summit.
And then AWA, is that all wrapped up? Can people still submit for that?
They can submit products for review till the end of September.
Okay.
Since NADA is in January, we have to kind of make sure we chop off, new entrants. So we'll have that ceremony on January 24th. And Cliff, you have a great conference coming up in November as well, right?
7th and 8th. True. Right.
Autovate.
Where's that? Yes. Is that with still with Fast?
Yeah, they host it at the headquarters. Okay. It's downtown Austin. Yeah, so we use their facility. It's an old music.
Yeah. And how does one find out and get some more information on that? Brian, if you need to jump, thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to jump. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Thank you, Brian.
There's a link on our website, the Banks Report.
And the URL is?
thebanksreport.com/. So
we'll turn you into a marketer one day, Cliff.
Hang in there.
I'm good.
You are. That's for sure.
Yeah, we had 165 people last year, and had a really, I think, good, really strong first effort. So we'll try to provide an experience for our attendees.
Yeah, well, it's a great group of people over there at VAST too to help out and to be able to work with them, and so that's fantastic. So what is before we go though, what is the whole premise of that conference? What's it called? Automate
with a V. Autovate. Yes. Now my goal is to bring the investment community together with automotive retail, and have intelligent discussions. The dealers that we have there generally are well-funded, well-capitalized, and have the vision and desire to invest and try new things.
Mm-hmm. A great opportunity for larger dealer groups or dealers that want to invest in some of the software out there, which makes a hell of a lot of sense, because at that point they get to have a little bit more say and maybe where the software goes, or how it operates.
Or just the margins on software in comparisons to dealerships. It's a little difference.
That is true. That is true. So we have a pretty good mix of dealers, vendors, and investment firms.
Good deal.
That are there. So a lot of interesting conversations that go on.
And speaking of conferences, we have Digital Dealer 25 coming up, 16th and 18th of October. If you're on dealerrefresh.com, if you're looking for some savings on this, click the link or the ad over there. I think we've got $100 off to DR community members. I think it's 100 or 200. And
it says it right in front of you.
It does, 100. See, now I lost my train of thought there.
Well, we've got some tickets to give away. So.
Well, that's where I was going. I think we still have one more ticket at least that we need to give it away. We've done not a very good job at promoting and giving this ticket away.
Well, let's give it away next week.
Yeah, let's do that. And if anyone's interested, please click on the ad and save yourself $100. Typically, I think Ryan Leslie usually is the one that starts some type of thread over in the forums asking who all is going to be going to whatever conference. So maybe he'll jump on there and we can all put something together. And I see real quick, Nick Cybella jumped in because we mentioned AR and VR. He just commented over in the over on Facebook. So if anyone's interested in some cool VR stuff, be sure to check out what he's got going on. So again, Cliff, thank you so much for joining us today. We've had a tremendous amount of activity around this topic, especially right now on Facebook. So thanks for everyone that's that jumped in and has been participating.
Thanks.
You got it, Cliff. We'll talk to you.
It was a learning experience. It was good. The comments have been great. So
yeah, I'm dying to go back over. There's, I don't know, we might have hit 100 already. All right. Well, this wraps up Refresh Friday. Thanks again for attending, and Cliff, we'll speak with you real soon.
Okay, you guys take care.
You too, man. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Cliff.